We've all heard the stereotype that powerlifters are fat, out of shape, and they're not really athletes. Well, with the current landscape of the sport today, that is no longer the case, with a lot of the best lifters in the world not only being crazy jacked, but also crazy ripped and not looking out of place at a bodybuilding show. So I'm going to go through the 12 biggest examples of that, the 12 best physiques in powerlifting. So first, shout out to Jacob_Mikes, who inspired this video by leaving this comment suggesting I look at the best powerlifting physiques. For those that don't know, I'm a huge fan of reading and responding to comments. So if you have any suggestions for videos, let me know. And if I like it, there's a good chance I'll make it and I'll give you a shout out if I do. Now, the lifters that Jacob mentioned in his comments are guys like Pana, Russ. Those are the popular examples that we all know that come to mind when you think about aesthetic powerlifters, right? They're big on social media, they post their physiques a lot. And Pana and Russ may appear in this video, but I've also included a lot of other lifters who aren't quite as mainstream, who aren't quite as popular, and that you might not have heard or seen too much about. Even though their physiques are just as aesthetic as those two. So starting off, we're going to be looking at Kyota Ushiyama. So this is going to be in no particular order, by the way. But Kyota is one of the powerlifters who has actually competed in bodybuilding before, hence why all his poses here are going to be looking very professional. How's that for a powerlifting physique? Also, he didn't do this when he was prepping for a bodybuilding comp. He did this a few weeks before he broke the world record total, which I'll show you next. And yes, it is easier to be this lean when you're in a lower weight class, and Kyota is in fact a 66 lifter. However, not all the lifters I'm going to be looking at are in the lower weight classes. In fact, I have quite a few 93s, 105s, hell, I even have a 120 towards the end of this video that I'm going to be looking at, who looks like a bodybuilder. But yeah, Kyota is one of the best examples of an aesthetic ripped physique as a world-class level powerlifter. So I'm also going to be showing you their best performances just to demonstrate that they are in fact some of the best lifters in the world. And here is that Kyota world record breaking performance that he did at the end of last year, 725 as a 66. Now, I don't know Japanese, so I have no idea what these subtitles are saying. But he's attempted to break the world record before and hasn't quite got it, and this time he did, so I assume it's something along those lines. And again, this performance was done only a few weeks after he posted that physique video that I showed you, so that is in fact how strong he is at that level of leanness. And Kyota is moving up to the 74s, so there's a good chance we're going to see him pack on some more mass onto his physique. And we're very curious to see what he looks like as a 74 lifter moving forward. Okay, next up is Krzysztof Wierzbicki, Mr. Deadlift or Mr. Front Double Bicep. Now, every other lifter that I'm going to have in this video is going to be a current lifter who currently lifts in the IPF, in tested powerlifting. Krzysztof Wierzbicki is the only one who does not do that. He left the IPF a number of years ago and he now competes on the untested side. However, Krzysztof Wierzbicki was one of the first examples of this real athletic look in powerlifting. He was a 5-time world champion, and in fact, he was there from the very first year in 2012. That's when he won his first world title. He lifted in the 93s and the 105s, and he was famous for his trademark front double bicep after pulling a ridiculous deadlift world record, which he always seemed to do. And I don't have the best shots or videos of his physique because he doesn't post it as much as someone like Kyota does. However, you can still see there that is a wicked physique for a world champion and world record holding powerlifter. Now, his best ever deadlift is his 400 kilos that he did in 2017, which still stands today as the overall 105 deadlift world record. Sanchez Dillon has matched it in the IPF but not yet beat it. And his best ever total under tested conditions is 900.5 as a 105 lifter. Okay, back to the current tested lifters. Next up is Regin Stergakis, Danish lifter who's a 105. Still young, still a junior, 22 years old, and that physique is ridiculous. One of the most muscular lifters in the IPF. As a 105, looking like that is absolute insanity. And as a junior, this guy still has mass that he's going to be able to pack on. Absolutely insane. So his best ever performance is a 925.5 kilo total that you see here. He actually did this at 120, weighing about 110 in a meet where he didn't cut to make 105. However, he's still remaining as a 105 moving forward. His best total as a 105 is 903.5 when he won Junior Worlds last year. And I believe in the gym he's put up training totals of over 940, which is over the IPF world record as a 105. So very interesting to see how his physique will develop as he feels, well, he's already pretty much filled out the weight class. He's going to go up to 120s. Maybe he will. He's still a junior, so who knows. And here we go, Panagiotis Tarinidis. So again, one of the typical examples of this, of having a crazy ripped physique as a world-class level powerlifter. He's a 66, and his best ever total is his 730 that he actually did, weighing a bit more than 66. His best performance as a 66 was 713, and it seems like everyone has been begging him to move up a weight class for a long time now, because he always seems to lose quite a bit of kilos with that water cut, and he's so lean. I mean, he's absolutely shredded, and he's another lifter who I don't think he's confirmed that he's moving up to 74, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does, and I think he should. And it'll be interesting to see how much mass he can add onto his frame, and if he can maintain that similar level of leanness there. Next up, Emil Krastev. This is an underrated one. Not a lot of people realize how jacked and how aesthetic Emil Krastev is. There he is there going through a few poses. He's a 93 kilo powerlifter. He is the current world record holder in the IPF for the 93s, with his Sheffield performance that he did this year, with his 317.5 kilo squat. That side chest is absolutely ridiculous. Also low-key one of the best front double biceps in the sport. 230 kilo bench, and his 365 kilo deadlift, which almost he himself couldn't believe that he was able to pull that on that day. So he uses 365, and this gave him a 917.5 total, which broke the IPF world record and still stands since Sheffield as the current 93 kilo IPF world record. And there you go. That is the physique with which he was able to do that. I mean, he doesn't look like he's that far out from being able to step on a bodybuilding stage with those poses. Emil Krastev, probably the most underrated physique in powerlifting, I would say. Next up, speaking of underrated, here's another one that you might not have heard of or seen too much of. Chun-Chia Fan, a 74 kilo lifter who is crazy ripped. You can see a few shots of him here in this video. He's one of the best 74 kilo lifters in the world, and with a lot of lifters having left the 74s in the last couple of years, he remains as one of the only ones who can push towards 800 kilos, aside from obviously Perk. So you can see how crazy jacked he looked when he was lifting there. And his best performance is a 780 kilo total that he did at Asian Championships at the end of last year, with his 255 squat, 215 kilo bench. This is the IPF world record bench in the 74s, and it's no surprise that it's owned by a guy who is that jacked and who has one of the best physiques. There seems to be a pretty strong correlation between physiques and bench presses, with Emil also having a monster bench. There you have it, and that was also a 310 kilo deadlift, and that gave him his 780 total. And like I said, he's one of the only 74s who can push 800 and potentially challenge Perk, although Perk is way above that. Next up is Demetrius Smith, relative newcomer to the top level of powerlifting, but man, talk about aesthetic physiques. This guy is right up there with one of the best. He's a 93 kilo lifter from the US in absolutely crazy stacked weight class the 93s are in America. And one of the most aesthetic physiques. He's super lean. He still hasn't filled out the weight class. I think he weighs in around 90, like low 90s. So he's still got a few kilos he can put on. And his best performance was at PA Nats just recently gone with this 310 kilo squat, on his way to locking up a 5th place finish, although he came very close to finishing 2nd with his final deadlift. Here is a 210 kilo bench. But yeah, one of the most shredded elite level powerlifters, I would say. And this easy 360 deadlift. So this gave him an 880 kilo total before he attempted a 382.5 deadlift to give him 2nd place, which he came very close to but didn't quite get. So he is definitely capable of a 900 kilo total. So make no mistake about it, he's right up there with the best of the best in the 93s. And he's still got a few kilos to fill out for his weight class. And imagine him with even more muscle. Hard to imagine, especially with how ripped he is there. Definitely one of the most aesthetic powerlifters out there. Next up is Ade Omisakin, who was a former 83 kilo world record holder. Perhaps not quite as lean as some of the other lifters we've seen on this list, but the amount of muscle he's packed onto his frame as an 83 is ludicrous. I mean, look how thick that back is. Absolutely crazy muscular as an 83. How he makes 83s, I have no idea. So his best ever performance was his 861 kilo total at Western Euros last year, which is where he broke the IPF 83 kilo world record and secured his invite to Sheffield. This 305.5 kilo squat, this 192.5 kilo bench, and as you can probably guess by how thick that back is, deadlift is his best lift, and here he is doing 363 kilos to lock up that 861 total. Unfortunately, Sheffield didn't quite have his best day, although he attempted 380.5 and came very close to getting it. So he's right up there with the world record deadlift potential, and he absolutely smoked 840 at Euros, like RP7. So the battle between him and Joe Borenstein at Worlds is going to be one to watch for sure. And I mean, Joe B might be the favorite, and I'm a huge Joe B fan, but if we're going by physique, I'm sorry, but I have to give it to Ade. Next up, we have Vladimir Mbassi, who is a Swiss 105 kilo lifter. So again, he's in one of the higher weight classes, and to be this jacked and this shredded as a 105 is insane. He's actually quite tall, hence why he's a 105, but he is, yeah, insanely jacked and insanely shredded as a 105. And his best ever performance was his performance at Euros, where he finished 4th with this 305 kilo squat, this world record 234 kilo bench. So again, the correlation between aesthetic physiques and bench presses continues. He's the bench world record holder in the 105s. And looking at how muscular he is, especially in the upper body, yeah, that is not a surprise. And he deadlifted 357.5, which is also a pretty big deadlift, for an 896.5 kilo total. That gave him a 4th place finish at Euros. So Vladimir Mbassi, again, very underrated because not a lot of people were paying attention to him, especially before he broke the bench world record at Euros. But yeah, again, doesn't get the credit he deserves for how insanely jacked and shredded he is. Next up, we have Joey Awala, who is another British lifter. He used to be an 83 and he's since moved up to the 93s and packed on even more muscle. Perhaps not quite as lean as he was as an 83, but definitely more muscular. His best performance was this 303.5 kilo squat that he hit on his way to totaling 831 as a 93. hit this 192.5 kilo bench. And his best lift being this 335 kilo deadlift. So an 831 total as a 93. And even though he's bulked up a weight class, he's still retained a lot of his leanness and a lot of his aesthetics. And that is due to the amount of muscle he has packed on. So definitely one of the best physiques in the sport today. Okay, here we go. This is the 120 lifter I was talking about. Abdul Majeed Sulayman, or Mo as a lot of people refer to him as. He used to be a 105 and he's since moved up to the 120s. And how he's still this jacked as a 120 in the IPF is mind-boggling. So he hasn't filled out the 120s yet. He weighs about, low 110s, which makes sense. He just wants to focus on quality mass, not just weight for the sake of gaining weight. And you can see it's working for him because, man, he still is pretty damn ripped at that body weight especially. So his best ever performance came at the Arnold Sports Festival with his 337.5 kilo squat on his way to a 937.5 total, including this 220 kilo bench. That side chest is ridiculous, by the way. I think that is the best side chest in powerlifting. I mean, look at that. Look at the delts. Unbelievable. And 380 kilo deadlift. This gave him his 937.5 kilo total as a 120. And he's still filling out the weight class. Who knows how high he's going to get in that weight class, whether he's even going to get to the upper end of it. But yeah, looking at the 120 weight class being the second biggest just before the super heavyweights, it is very rare to see someone who is that jacked, that muscular, and still that lean in that weight class. So despite Mo being one of the smaller 120s, weighing in the low end of the 110s, I wouldn't be surprised if he still is one of the most muscular given how much leaner he is than a lot of his 120 compatriots. And last but not least, of course, the best powerlifting physiques video would not be complete without mentioning Russel Orhii, who is perhaps the biggest example of this, best example, or most widely known example anyway. Here he is hitting some poses a few days after his Sheffield performance. So this is just how he looks year round essentially. He's also another lifter who has done a bodybuilding show before, however that was quite a few years ago now. And again, this is just what he looks like when he's in his best powerlifting form. Like I said, a few days after he broke the world record at Sheffield, he was hitting us with these poses. So speaking of Sheffield, that was his best performance. He totaled 870.5 via this 338 kilo squat. Obviously a world record. I mean, look how big his legs are. Ridiculous. 202.5 kilo bench. And this 330 kilo deadlift. And I'm still salty about the fact he got robbed of this final pull. 342.5 would have given him an 883. I'm sorry, but to me that's still a good lift. I still maintain he got robbed, but anyway. Yeah, Russ is the quintessential example of an aesthetic, lean, jacked, and ripped powerlifter. And you can see from his poses there, I mentioned Ade had a ridiculous amount of muscle as an 83, but no one comes close to Russ when it comes to 83 kilo powerlifting physiques. So there you have it, the best physiques in powerlifting. Russ being the most notable example that you've heard of, but hopefully in this video you've seen that there's plenty of other ones out there, and hopefully this breaks the stereotype that powerlifters cannot also be aesthetic, jacked, and shredded.